Now that you have Visual Studio installed in your computer, let's go ahead and build our first console application. Open up Visual Studio 2017. Go to the File menu, go to New, and Project. Select Console App.NET Framework, and we'll type in a name for our application. This will be placed in your Documents folder under Visual Studio 2017 and Projects. Hit OK. Visual Studio will automatically generate the files required for this application. As you can see, the application opens up to the file program.cs, CS standing for C#. In this file, you'll see a number of features. First, you'll see what are called using statements at the top. Using statements define what namespaces will be used by this specific file. What are namespaces? We've defined a namespace right here. The namespace My First Console App. It's a logical grouping or collection of what are called classes. But what are classes? Classes are blueprints, patterns, and sets of instructions. Essentially, it's an object. It can have properties, store information, and do things. If you think of a car can do things such as move or shift gears, and it can have properties. It can have a color. It can have a number of axles or a number of doors. As we go further in this course, we will be using classes more and more often, creating methods and properties, instantiating classes, and enumerating them. But for now, the class here encapsulates what we will use to write our application. Inside of this basic class called program is a method called main. When this application is run, the .NET Framework looks for the main method as a starting point for where to run your application. Anything inside this method will be run first. So when we're building our application, we want to make sure whatever we want to be done first runs inside the main method. What is a method? Well, like I said, when I talked about classes, how a class can have properties or do things, a method is a verb. It is the ability to do something. You'll hear these called functions oftentimes interchanged with methods. Ignore what static and void mean for now, and ignore what the string array of args are for now. But in essence, this is where the program starts. So what do we want to do here? In a console application, we convey information to the user through the use of a console. If you remember the old-style DOS Windows, or if you ever open the command prompt in Windows, that's the console we're referring to. So in our application, we want to display to the user just a simple hello world. How do we do that? First, we use the console object. Now you'll notice that something popped up, and you'll see this often as you're typing. It's called IntelliSense in Visual Studio. It is a way for you to save some time. Visual Studio will try and complete your statements, and it'll also help when you're trying to look at what properties a class may have. In this instance, we're accessing the console object, and then we hit a dot. And what we want to do here is write. So you could use IntelliSense to find, okay, how do I write to the screen? And you'll find something called write or write line, or you can just type it yourself. You don't have to use IntelliSense. But again, it's a way to streamline the development process and also allow you to see what is available when you're accessing an object. So we'll go here and hit write line, and then we'll open a parenthesis. What do we do here? We could do nothing. We could just do console write line, and it would literally write a line to the console window. Or if we want to say something, we can look at, okay, what other ways can we convey information through this method? I can, for instance, apply a string. And what a string is simply just some text wrapped in quotation marks. So here I want to say hello world. And that's it. At the end of this line, we'll put a semicolon. This is it. This is a full application that allows you to write the words hello world to a console window. Now let me step back for 1 second and talk about things you have to do to get this to work. So again, we talked about the console object, and the console object has a method called WriteLine that allows us to do something. In this case, write a string to the screen. You also notice I put a semicolon at the end, and it's very important to understand syntax in C#. C#, like most programming languages, depend on specific syntax to build out blocks or different levels of your application. So as you see here at the very top, we have a namespace, my first console app, an open bracket and a close bracket. This defines the block for the namespace. Inside that, we have a class, and you can have more than one class. And again, anything in here, in these two brackets, is the contents of that class. When we go down to the method main, again, anything within the two brackets preceding the definition of that method are the contents of that method. And then when you're not defining a method here, but you're rather accessing one, you use parentheses. And inside you provide arguments. When you're defining a method, such as main, I had mentioned string args, these are called your parameters. And what you input into the parameters are arguments. So in this case, console.WriteLine accepts a parameter as a string, what you want to display, and we pass an argument of hello world. And at the end, anytime you're completing a statement like we just did, console.WriteLine, you put a semicolon, and that ends a statement line. So we want to display and build our application. So in the menu, there is a build menu, and hit build solution. At the bottom, you'll see your progress. And it will tell you whether or not you succeeded or failed. To run the application, hit the Start button. Now that's interesting. We didn't really see anything, did we? It went away. What happened in this case is that the execution of the program completed, there was no input required, nothing else was to be done, so the console window was closed. If we want to be able to see what we just did, let's accept some input. We'll access the console object again, and we'll read a line. Now normally, this returns a value. So before, when we accessed WriteLine, we sent a value to the console. When you call readLine, you can retrieve a value from the console. And we'll talk about that later when we look at assignment operators. But for now, let's just use readLine as a way to see the results of our write. We'll go ahead and build again. and hit start. And we see the application popped up and it said hello world. And now you'll see a cursor. It's waiting for input because we are reading a line from the console. And if you want to end the application and complete all the execution of the functions, simply hit enter. And the application ends. So if you've been following along and building an application yourself, congratulations on building your first C# application. Obviously this was quite simple, but it is where you need to start. And we'll look at later how to assign values to variables, how to write your own methods, how to build out parameters, how to build your own classes. We'll get there. But first, we need you to be able to build your application for the first time.